I sat in the hallway of Maplewood Community Hospital, hands pressed together so tightly my knuckles turned pale. The fluorescent lights above hummed faintly, reflecting off the polished linoleum floors that smelled faintly of antiseptic and floor wax. It was late afternoon, the kind of gray Ohio day that looked like it could rain at any moment. I'd barely noticed. All I could hear was the echo of my own heartbeat and the sound of my daughters crying from somewhere behind the closed doors of the pediatric wing. Sophie had fallen again. My sweet 7-year-old girl with those big, questioning eyes and hair like spun gold had bones as fragile as porcelain. One wrong step on the living room rug and her tiny frame had crumpled under her own weight. Another fracture. Another trip to the ER. Another bill I didn't know how we would pay. I pressed my palms to my eyes, willing the tears back. I couldn't cry here, not in public, not where strangers could see a mother falling apart. But the truth clawed at me. I was falling apart. I was tired of the sound of casts being cut off and replaced, of painkillers and wheelchairs, of hushed conversations with doctors who said things like chronic condition and long-term care. I was tired of watching Sophie smile through it all. That fragile, heartbreaking smile of a child who had learned far too early how to be brave. Mrs. Whitman. I looked up to see Dr. Julia Ramirez, her face professional but kind, standing in the doorway. She's resting now. The break isn't as bad as last time, but we need to schedule another scan to check for microfractures. I nodded, my throat too tight to form words. When Dr. Ramirez left, I dropped back onto the bench and stared at the floor. This was our life now. Hospital visits, therapy sessions, medical bills stacking up like a cruel joke. Ethan, my husband, was working double shifts at the auto shop just to keep us afloat. I picked up extra evening shifts at the nursing home when I could. Still, it felt like we were treading water with weights tied to our ankles. And the house, our little one-story, wood-paneled house at the edge of Maplewood that used to feel cozy now felt suffocating. Every corner had been padded, every edge child-proofed, every rug removed. Yet no matter how careful we were, Sophie's bones still betrayed her. Sophie never complained. That was what hurt the most. She'd say things like, "Don't worry, Mommy, I can still draw," and she'd sit on the couch with her sketch pad, smiling through the pain. She loved drawing so much. Houses, flowers, animals, anything that made her feel like a normal kid. I thought of Ethan, probably hunched over an engine at that very moment, oil on his hands and exhaustion on his face. He'd barely looked at me this morning before rushing out the door. He was shutting down, I could see it, and I didn't know how to reach him anymore. And then there was the money. Always the money. Even with insurance, the out-of-pocket costs for her treatments were crushing. Dr. Ramirez had mentioned a foundation, a charity program that might cover specialized equipment. I'd mentioned it to Ethan last week, and he'd waved me off, his pride wounded by the idea of asking for help. "We'll figure it out on our own," he'd said, but I was no longer sure we could. The hallway grew quiet as evening visiting hours came to an end. I pressed my hand over my chest, trying to steady the pounding beneath it. I had no answers, no solutions, just a child who kept breaking and a marriage that felt like it was splintering too. Through the door, I heard Sophie's voice, faint but determined. "Mommy?" I stood quickly, wiping at my cheeks before stepping inside. She was lying there, small and pale against the hospital sheets, her sketch pad balanced on her knees as if nothing had happened. She gave me that smile, the one that both healed and broke me in the same breath. I took her hand, kissed her knuckles gently, and whispered, "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here." Morning sunlight spilled weakly through the thin curtains of our little one-story house, highlighting the scratches on the kitchen table and the stack of unpaid bills pushed into a corner like an accusation. I stood at the counter pouring coffee into a chipped mug, watching Ethan tighten his work boots. He didn't look at me when he said, "I've got to stay late again. We've got 3 engines torn apart right now." I nodded, even though he wasn't really asking for permission. He was always tired now, always somewhere else in his head, thinking about invoices and overtime hours. I couldn't blame him. He was carrying so much on his back, but so was I. Sophie sat at the table with her right arm in a cast decorated with doodles, little flowers and suns she'd drawn herself. "Can I bring my sketch pad to school, Mom?" she asked. "Of course, sweetheart," I said, managing a smile. She never went anywhere without that sketch pad these days. She was a different kind of 7-year-old. Most kids wanted to run, climb, fall, get back up. Sophie knew that falling could mean weeks in a cast, so she poured her energy into drawing instead. Ethan brushed past me to grab his keys. "Don't forget, she's got physical therapy at 4, he said, eyes still on his phone. "I won't forget," I answered softly. He was already out the door before I finished the sentence. I stared at the closed door for a moment longer, then turned back to Sophie. She was looking at me with those big eyes, wise beyond her years. "Daddy's mad, huh?" she asked quietly. "He's just tired, honey." "We're all tired," I said, kneeling next to her chair and tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "It's going to be okay." But I wasn't sure I believed it anymore. After dropping Sophie at school, I went to my shift at Maplewood Care Home. I worked as a nurse's aide part-time because Sophie's appointments and injuries kept me from holding a full-time schedule. It wasn't glamorous work, bathing patients, lifting them in and out of wheelchairs, taking vitals, but I liked the old folks. They reminded me that life could still have moments of grace, even when your body was falling apart. Still, all day my mind replayed the sound of Ethan's distant voice, Sophie's fragile smile, and Dr. Ramirez's suggestion from last week, a foundation that could help pay for a custom lightweight brace and mobility aids. That night, I brought it up again. "Ethan, there's a foundation that helps families with kids like Sophie. They could cover the cost of—" He cut me off, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Claire, we're not taking handouts. I can pick up more shifts. We'll figure it out." I stared at him, frustrated. This isn't about pride. It's about Sophie's life. She could move better, maybe even play outside like the other kids. "Like the other kids," he snapped, dropping the rag on the table. "She's not like the other kids, Claire, and no brace is going to change that. I'm doing everything I can." "What are you doing? Part-time hours? You think a charity is going to fix all this?" The word stung, cutting deeper than he intended, I knew, but they still hurt. Later that evening, Sophie sat on the couch drawing, oblivious, or maybe just pretending to be oblivious, to the tension swirling in the room. She looked up and said softly, "Mom, can I draw a picture of you smiling?" I nodded, my throat thick, and sat still while she sketched. When she handed me the paper, it was a smiling version of me I barely recognized. "You look happy there," she said. "Yeah, I guess I do," I whispered. I folded the paper and tucked it into my pocket, knowing I'd keep it forever. Because even if I didn't feel like the woman in that drawing, Sophie saw me that way, and maybe, somehow, that had to be enough for now. By the end of the week, exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. Every day had blurred together. Waking up before dawn, making lunches with one hand while checking Sophie's medical forms with the other, rushing to work, picking her up for physical therapy, and then crawling into bed long after Ethan had already passed out on the couch. It was Friday afternoon when Hannah stopped by. She was my best friend since high school, the kind of person who could read me with one glance. She stepped inside, looked around at the unwashed dishes and the pile of laundry, then at me, still in my scrubs, hair pulled into a messy bun. "Claire, when's the last time you sat down?" she asked. I tried to laugh, but it came out broken. Sitting down feels like a luxury these days. We sat at the table while Sophie napped in her room. I told Hannah about the fight with Ethan over the foundation funding, about how he looked at me like I was betraying him just for wanting help. My voice cracked when I said, "Sometimes I think if Sophie hadn't been born with this condition, maybe Ethan wouldn't look so defeated all the time. Maybe I wouldn't feel like I'm drowning." Hannah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Claire, don't do that to yourself. This isn't Sophie's fault, and it's not yours either." but the words hung heavy in the air even after she left. That evening, Ethan came home late, covered in grease, smelling like motor oil and frustration. He barely said hello before heading to the shower. I reheated dinner and waited, feeling the silence stretch thin as glass. When he finally sat down, I tried to talk. Ethan, we need to figure out a plan. The bills are stacking up, and Sophie, he cut me off, rubbing his eyes. I'm working 60 hours a week, Claire. What else do you want from me? I clenched my jaw, trying to stay calm. I want us to be on the same team. I want to stop feeling like we're falling apart every time another bill comes in. He slammed his fork down. We're on the same team. But you keep talking about some charity, like we can't handle our own life. I don't want their pity. Pity. My voice shook. This isn't about pity. It's about Sophie walking without fear. It's about her not having to live every day like she's made of glass. He pushed his chair back hard enough to scrape the floor. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see her? I fix cars all day and still can't fix my own kid. The words hit me like a punch. And for a moment, we just stared at each other, two people so tired, so desperate, neither knowing how to bridge the gap between us. Sophie woke up from her nap and shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. She froze when she saw us. Are you mad? She asked softly. Ethan knelt, forcing a smile. No, sweetheart. We're just talking. But she wasn't convinced. Kids always know more than you think. She went to the living room, sketchpad in hand, curling up on the couch without another word. I watched her draw, my chest aching. She shouldn't have to hear us fight. She shouldn't have to carry our fears on top of her own. Later, when Ethan went to bed, I sat on the couch and whispered to myself, we can't keep living like this, but I had no idea how to change it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night, one of those evenings when everything felt like it was stacked against us. I had just gotten home from my shift. Sophie had a math worksheet crumpled on the kitchen table, and Ethan was still in his work boots, staring at a half-eaten sandwich. The silence was heavy, and for some reason it made my skin crawl. Did you pick up Sophie's prescription? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't look up. Forgot. I'll get it tomorrow. Tomorrow? She needs it tonight, Ethan. She's in pain. He finally met my eyes, and I could see it. Weeks of exhaustion, frustration, and anger bubbling under the surface. I'm doing the best I can, Claire. I can't be everywhere at once. I gripped the back of a chair. I'm not asking you to be everywhere. I'm asking you to care enough to do one thing right now when she needs you. His face hardened. Don't you dare say I don't care. I'm killing myself out there to keep this family afloat. I heard Sophie's footsteps from the hallway, but ignored them. Too angry to stop now. You think killing yourself is helping? You're shutting down, Ethan. You're here, but you're not really here. And I'm drowning alone while you keep pretending we're fine. We are fine, he snapped, slamming his hands on the table. You just can't stop looking for someone else to fix everything. That foundation you keep talking about like we're some charity case. I felt something inside me snap like a thread stretched too tight for too long. My voice rose before I could stop it. If Sophie hadn't been born with this condition, maybe we wouldn't be here. Maybe we wouldn't be falling apart every single day. The room went silent, except for a tiny gasp. Sophie was standing in the doorway, clutching her sketchpad to her chest. Her eyes were wide, what with tears that hadn't fallen yet. You wish I wasn't born, she whispered. My stomach dropped. Sophie, no, I didn't mean, but she was already backing away, shaking her head, her small shoulders trembling. You don't want me, her voice cracked before she turned and ran to her room, the door slamming like a gunshot. Ethan stared at me, his face pale with disbelief. What the hell did you just say? I didn't mean it like that, I said, my voice breaking, but he stepped back as if I were someone he didn't recognize. Yeah, well, she heard you, he said coldly. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Ethan, don't. But he was already gone, the door slamming behind him, leaving me in the kitchen with nothing but the echo of my own words. I pressed my hands to my mouth. I wanted to take it back, erase it from the air, erase it from Sophie's memory, but it was too late. Those words were out there now, floating like poison. From behind her closed door, I heard her crying, quiet, broken sobs that shattered something inside me. I sank to the floor, clutching my knees. Oh, God, what have I done? Outside, I could hear the faint murmur of voices, Deborah Collins, the neighbor, talking to someone near the fence. She must have heard everything. And I knew how fast things traveled in Maplewood. By morning, half the neighborhood would know I'd told my daughter I wished she hadn't been born. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I could fix what I'd broken. Morning light crept into the house like an uninvited guest, cold and harsh. I hadn't slept. I sat on the edge of the couch, still in yesterday's clothes, listening to the silence that came after Sophie's tears had finally stopped sometime past midnight. Her door had stayed shut. Ethan never came home. The words I'd said the night before echoed in my head like a siren I couldn't silence. If Sophie hadn't been born with this condition, maybe we wouldn't be here. It didn't matter what I meant. What mattered was what she heard. By the time Sophie padded out of her room, clutching her sketch pad like a shield, her eyes were red and swollen. She wouldn't meet my gaze. I crouched down, reaching for her hand. Sweetheart, about last night, I didn't mean what I said. I was angry and tired, and she pulled her hand back gently. Can I go to school early? Her voice was small, flat, as if all the sparkle had been scraped out of it. I swallowed hard. Sure, baby. After dropping her off, I headed to the grocery store. That's when it started. 2 women by the produce aisle lowered their voices, but not enough. Did you hear about Claire Whitman? Told her kid she wished she wasn't born. My stomach twisted. I turned the corner quickly, pretending I hadn't heard. But I had. By afternoon, I knew Deborah Collins had talked. She was out watering her roses when I came home, her lips pressed in a line of faux sympathy. Morning, Claire. I hope Sophie's doing all right after, last night. Her eyes lingered like she was waiting for me to confess. I tightened my grip on the grocery bag. She's fine, I said curtly, heading inside before she could add another dagger of small-town pity. Inside, the silence pressed down heavier than before. Ethan still hadn't come home. His phone went straight to voicemail. I paced the living room, trying to figure out what to do next, until Hannah showed up without calling. She stepped inside and shut the door behind her. Okay, what happened? I just heard from someone at the school, and they're saying. She stopped at the look on my face. Oh, Claire! Tears welled in my eyes. I didn't mean it, Hannah. I was so angry, so scared, and it just came out. And she heard me. My voice cracked as I added, I don't know how to fix it. She thinks I don't want her. Hannah sat me down and held my hands. Listen to me. You made a mistake, yes, but you love that little girl. She knows it, even if she's hurt right now. But you need to show her, with actions, not just words. I wiped at my cheeks. I don't even know where to start. Ethan's gone. Sophie's barely looking at me, and half the neighborhood thinks I'm some kind of monster. Hannah hesitated before speaking again. Then maybe it's time to get some help, Claire. Call your mom. I know it's been years, but she might be able to help, or at least give you a place to breathe for a minute. The thought made me flinch. My mother, Margaret, and I hadn't spoken in almost 4 years. Too many arguments about life choices and pride. But maybe Hannah was right. Maybe I didn't have any pride left to lose. That night, Sophie stayed in her room again, sketching quietly. I sat outside her door, listening to the scratch of pencil on paper, wanting so badly to just open it, scoop her up, and erase last night. But I stayed there, knees tucked to my chest, whispering through the door. I'm sorry, baby. I love you more than anything. I'm so sorry. No answer came. Just silence and the soft sound of her pencil, and I realized silence could hurt more than any scream. The next morning, I sat in the car outside an old brick house on the edge of town, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. My mother lived here. Margaret Allen. My mother, who hadn't spoken to me in almost 4 years. The last time we saw each other, we'd shouted across this very driveway about my choices, about Ethan, about how I didn't need her help. Pride had built a wall between us that neither of us tried to climb, until now. I stepped out, nerves jangling, and walked up the porch steps. My hand hesitated over the doorbell, then pressed. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman with gray-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun and eyes that looked surprised to see me. "Claire," she said softly. I swallowed. "Hi, Mom." For a long moment, we just stared at each other, the silence stretching years between us. Finally, she stepped aside. "Come in." The house hadn't changed. Same faint smell of lavender and old books. Same quilt on the couch we'd sewn together when I was a teenager. I almost cried at the familiarity. She motioned for me to sit. "You look tired," she said gently. I gave a shaky laugh. "That's one way to put it." Her gaze softened. "This is about Sophie, isn't it?" I nodded, biting my lip. "She's not doing well, Mom. Another fracture. More therapy." And my voice cracked. I said something awful. Something I can't take back. She heard it. Everyone heard it. And Ethan, he's gone right now. I don't even know where. I don't know how to fix any of it. She reached across the table, taking my hands. "Oh, honey, parenting breaks all of us at some point. It doesn't mean you don't love her." Tears blurred my vision. I love her more than anything. I'm so scared all the time. We sat quietly for a moment before she rose and walked to an old writing desk, pulling out a small lockbox. She opened it, revealing documents and a savings passbook. "I've been putting money aside for years," she said. "I thought you'd never take it, so I didn't mention it. But maybe it's time you know." I blinked. "Mom, I can't take your money," she smiled faintly. "It's not just money. A friend of mine, Walter Hughes, you might remember him from church, started a foundation a few years back. They help kids with rare conditions. He told me once, if you ever know a family who needs us, send them my way." I didn't push before because of how things ended between us. But Claire, this is why he built it. For kids like Sophie. Hope flickered in my chest, small but real. "You think he could help her?" "I know he can," she said firmly. "He funds custom mobility devices, therapy programs, things regular insurance doesn't touch. And he'd do it for Sophie in a heartbeat." I wiped my eyes. "Mom, thank you." She squeezed my hand. "Let's not waste any more years being stubborn, okay?" For the first time in years, I stood and hugged her. She stiffened for a moment, then melted into it, holding me tight. "You're still my girl," she whispered. "And Sophie's my granddaughter. Let me help you this time." As I drove home later, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. Real, tangible relief. There was a path forward now. Through Walter Hughes. Through this foundation. Through maybe even healing with my own mother. When I walked in the door, Sophie was curled on the couch sketching as usual. She glanced up, guarded but curious. "Where were you, Mommy?" I knelt beside her, brushing a stray hair from her face. "I went to see Grandma, and I think we found someone who can help you walk easier, sweetheart. Someone who believes you can do more than just sit and draw." Her eyes widened, a tiny spark of hope flickering there. "Really?" "Really?" I whispered, hugging her gently. For the first time since everything fell apart, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were going to be okay. 2 days later, we met Walter Hughes. He was taller than I remembered from my childhood memories of church picnics. A man in his late 50s with kind eyes and the firm handshake of someone who'd spent his life building things. He welcomed us into his modest office, walls lined with photos of kids who had received help from his foundation. "I read Margaret's message," he said, smiling at Sophie. "She tells me you're an artist." Sophie held up her sketch pad shyly. "I like to draw flowers and houses and people sometimes." Walter crouched down to her level. Well, that's good because we're about to draw a whole new picture for you, a picture where you move around easier. He explained that the foundation could provide a custom lightweight brace and adaptive crutches, designed specifically for kids with brittle bones. This isn't about pity, he said firmly, looking at me. This is about potential. Every kid deserves a chance to do a little more, to feel a little freer. Sophie's face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. She traced the edge of her cast and whispered, "Will it hurt?" Walter shook his head. "Nope. It'll feel different, but not painful. And we'll have a therapist show you exactly how to use it." For the first time since that awful night, I felt a genuine smile tug at my lips. "Thank you, Walter. You don't know what this means." He chuckled. "I do, Claire. Trust me, I do." That afternoon, Sophie was fitted for her new brace. She wobbled at first, but when the physical therapist, Linda, coached her, she took 2 careful steps, then 3. Her eyes widened. "Mom, I'm doing it," she said, excitement trembling in her voice. I clapped, tears stinging my eyes. "You are doing it, sweetheart." When we got home, Sophie went straight to her room and drew for over an hour. When she emerged, she handed me a drawing. A little girl standing on 2 legs, smiling wide, a brace on her leg and a sun overhead. She'd written at the bottom, "Me, walking like everybody else." I had to turn away so she wouldn't see the tears sliding down my cheeks. Ethan still hadn't come home. He'd sent a brief text saying he was staying with Marcus, his co-worker, to clear his head. It hurt, but part of me understood. He'd been carrying his own storm. That night, Marcus called me. "Claire, I think you should know something," he said, voice steady. "Ethan's been blaming himself for everything. Sophie's condition, the bills, even what you said. He's talking like he's failed as a husband and father." I swallowed. "Marcus, can you talk to him? He listens to you." "I already did," Marcus said. "Told him this isn't about failing, it's about being human. And about stepping up instead of running away. I think he's starting to get it." After the call, I sat on the couch, looking at Sophie curled up under a blanket, her sketch pad still on her lap even as she drifted to sleep. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope seeping back into our lives. It wasn't just about braces and therapy. It was about second chances, about finding a way back to each other. The next morning, as Sophie practiced walking between 2 parallel bars at the therapy center, she looked up at me and said, "Mom, maybe I can draw me running one day." I laughed through tears. "Yeah, sweetheart, maybe you can." The therapist smiled, wiping her hands on her scrubs. "She's strong, Claire. Stronger than you think." And I believed her. For the first time, I really believed her. It was late evening when I heard the crunch of tires on our gravel driveway. Sophie was in her room, finishing a drawing, and I was folding laundry at the kitchen table, trying not to think too much. The front door creaked open, and there he was, Ethan, standing in the doorway like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come inside. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he set his bag down and said, quietly, "Marcus told me about the brace and about your mom." I nodded, unsure of how much he knew. "We found help, Ethan. Walter Hughes's foundation is covering the therapy. Sophie's walking a little already." His eyes softened, guilt flickering in them. I should have been here for that. I put the laundry aside and stepped closer. "You were hurting too. I get it, but Ethan, we can't keep running from each other. We have to be on the same side. For Sophie, for us." He ran a hand over his face. "I know. I thought if I just worked harder, it would fix everything. But all I did was disappear when you needed me most." He looked up, his voice breaking slightly. "And I left you alone after you said that thing. Claire, she's just a kid." Hearing those words, "I know," I said quickly, tears rising again. "I hate myself for it. I didn't mean it, Ethan. I was drowning and it came out all wrong. But it's stuck in her head now, and I don't know how to make her believe I love her." He stepped closer and took my hands. "Then let's show her. Together." We walked to Sophie's room. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor, sketch pad in her lap. She looked up, surprised to see Ethan. "Daddy." "Hey, sweetheart." He knelt, opening his arms, and she climbed into them without hesitation, clinging to his neck. "I'm sorry I wasn't here," he whispered. "I'm sorry for leaving you and Mommy. That wasn't right." Sophie nodded, pressing her face into his shirt. Then she glanced at me, her eyes hesitant. "Do you still wish I wasn't born, Mommy?" My heart cracked. I dropped to my knees beside them. "No, baby. I don't wish that. Not ever. I love you so much it scares me sometimes, and I was scared when I said that. I never should have let those words come out." I cupped her cheeks gently. "You are the best thing that's ever happened to me." For a long moment, she just looked at me, then threw her arms around my neck. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, sweetheart. Always." Ethan wrapped his arms around both of us, holding us close, and for the first time in weeks, we felt like a family again. The next day, Sophie wanted to show us her progress at therapy. As she walked carefully with her new brace, a few neighbors, including Deborah Collins, gathered by the sidewalk. Deborah had that tight smile of someone who wanted to say something, but didn't know how. When Sophie finished her steps, she turned, beaming. "I did it, Mommy. Daddy, look." We clapped, cheering, and Deborah stepped forward. "Claire," she said softly, I might have repeated something I shouldn't have. I judged too quickly. I'm sorry." I took a deep breath, choosing grace over anger. "Thank you, Deborah. Sophie's doing better now, and that's what matters." Deborah crouched to Sophie's level. "You're very brave, young lady. Keep showing us how it's done." Sophie smiled shyly, clutching her sketch pad like it was part of her. "I'm drawing me walking today," she said. Deborah nodded. "I hope you'll show me when you finish." For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight on my chest ease. Not everything was fixed, but we were finally moving in the right direction, together. A week later, the therapy center buzzed with soft music and the low hum of conversation. Today was Sophie's big day, her first full walk across the practice floor without support from the parallel bars. The therapist, Linda, crouched at one end, holding her arms open like a finish line. Sophie adjusted her brace, clutching her sketch pad in one hand for courage. Ethan stood on one side of the room, phone ready to record, and I stood on the other, hands clasped tightly together. "You can do this, sweetheart," I said softly. She nodded, her small face set with determination. "I'm ready." Linda stepped aside and Sophie began. One step, careful but steady. Another step, then another. Her legs trembled, but she kept going, her eyes fixed on us. When she reached the end, she burst into a grin, so wide it nearly split her face. "I did it!" she shouted, her voice echoing in the quiet room. Ethan whooped, sweeping her into his arms, spinning her once before setting her gently down. "You're incredible, kiddo." I knelt and hugged her tight, tears streaming freely now. "I'm so proud of you, baby girl. So proud." Linda clapped. "She's got natural balance. Give her a few months, and she'll be running circles around us." Sophie giggled, running and drawing at the same time. That evening back at home, Sophie sat at the kitchen table working on a new drawing for the local Dream Big Kids art contest. She focused with the seriousness of someone painting a masterpiece, tongue poking out slightly as she shaded the final corner. When she was done, she held it up. The picture showed a little girl, herself, walking with her brace in one hand and holding hands with her parents in the other. Above them, in a child's careful handwriting, were the words, "We're stronger together." "Can I submit it, Mom?" she asked. "You absolutely can." I kissed the top of her head. "It's perfect." 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. Sophie opened it herself, hands shaking a little. Inside was a certificate. Second place, Maplewood Dream Big Art Contest. Her eyes widened. Then she squealed, holding it high. "I won something." "You earned it, sweetheart," Ethan said, lifting her onto his shoulders while she laughed. We pinned the certificate on the fridge, right next to her old drawing of me smiling. Only this time, the smile felt real. That night, as Sophie slept, Ethan and I sat on the porch. The warm Ohio evening wrapped around us like a soft blanket. Fireflies blinked in the yard, and somewhere far away, a train whistle blew. He reached for my hand. "You know, I almost didn't come back that night," he admitted quietly. "I thought maybe you and Sophie would be better off without me." I squeezed his hand. "I thought the same thing about myself, Ethan. But we were wrong. We just forgot how to lean on each other." He nodded, eyes glinting in the porch light. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" I smiled, feeling the truth settle deep inside me. "Yeah, we are." I checked on Sophie one last time before bed. She was curled up with her sketch pad, a faint smile on her lips. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead and whispered, "You are my greatest joy, Sophie Whitman. Always." In that quiet moment, I thought back to the words I'd once said in anger, the words I thought might define us forever. But now, standing there watching my daughter sleep, I knew something with absolute clarity. Sometimes life gives you battles you never asked for, but it also gives you reasons to keep fighting. Sophie wasn't our burden. She was our miracle. And as I turned out the light and closed her door, I realized something else. Maybe, just maybe, we were finally stepping into the sunlight together.